May I intervene at this stage and put a couple of questions to you? One is, we talk about people's participation, but essentially it really means farmers' participation. Water users association are dominated by, and within farmers, the richer farmers. Other water users like fishermen and so on, they have very little voice in these things. So that is one thing. Even if you talk about consultation, participation and so on, it does not bring in all the users of water. That's number one. Number two, even in the farming community, the users, the irrigators, the agriculturists, they are not what they were 100 years ago. These are people who have been brought up, trained in the shadow of the new systems. So they are the newer kind of irrigating agriculturists. So you can't really find out, they don't know what the river was like originally. When you talk about the river as a living system, it has already been damaged by whatever has been done. So it is very difficult now to go back to that sort of period. So some of these things, some of these changes are perhaps irreversible. So we have to do what we can within the constraints of the present system. And so, I don't know what you would say to this, particularly, say if you have in Tamil Nadu, Dan Foundation is trying to organize Tank Farmers Association, Tank Water Users Association. There again, they are trying to bring in other users also to some extent, but this problem exists. So when you talk about Arthur Cotton, he is deified. There are shrines to Arthur Cotton, but they must have been built by farmers. That he may have done harm to others, other communities, maybe fishermen. I don't know if there is any literature on this subject. Is there?
About Arthur Cotton?
The harm that he might have done.
No.
Only the good is
is there. But there are people who have sort of critiqued Arthur Cotton.
Yeah.
There are several academic, not several, a few academic literatures available on critiquing Arthur Cotton.
Yeah.
But not from below,
Yeah.
or not from people, because people are taught that he's the god who saved this whole delta and made it rich and prosperous.
That is the general legend.
That's the legend which lives in their minds. So.
And so there are these two problems. One is that how do you bring in other water users of lesser political importance, maybe smaller in numbers? That is one problem. The other is that how do you really go back to the kind of relationship that existed between people and the river, because that has already been changed for the last 100 years. So it's extremely difficult. One other thing, you made a casual reference to SRI.
Yes.
Now SRI is much advocated, and you say it saves water and it gives you more yield and so on. Now you seem to imply a reservation on SRI. I would like you to explain that.
One thing is, whether we can include other. I've not really worked on Water Users Association, but when the Water Users Association as an idea had come in, I had reservations on the idea itself, because the moment you say users, because that was Chandrababu Naidu's pet word, users, because immediately he had privatized half the medical system also, where there's no free government hospital anymore in Andhra Pradesh. Started with Chandrababu Naidu, who made people pay user fee. And that was under World Bank conditionality, because he had taken so much loan from the World Bank. These are part of the conditionalities that it came with, that there be users fee and things like that. So the moment water users, and I have a point to make about how even Water Users Association, the way the tanks, people keep talking about tanks in a very, they eulogize the idea of tanks. It's fine. In the sense, ecologically it makes sense in terms of rainwater harvesting. But even in tanks, if you look at certain regions in certain areas within Andhra Pradesh, there's a history of certain communities having a hold over these resources. It was a Brahmanical system to begin with, because there were the temples, and it was built with a whole network of land grants with giving them access to certain resources, and only some people controlled it, obviously higher caste, upper castes. So in that sense, how much was it really used by the lower castes is a question. So we need to critique that. I haven't done much work on it, but it's a thought in my head that one should go back even further In fact, I feel that in at least in the Delta region of Andhra Pradesh, I feel that it is a very long, it goes back very long, not only 100 years, but even before that, prior to colonial rule, we have to go back to the caste hierarchy and the whole thing of Brahmanical systems, which smoothly, and I have noticed this everywhere in the country, wherever there's been a Brahmanical system in place, it has smoothly transited into the globalization era. In a very, it's a very subtle transition, but they are the ones who've made most of the, one has to work on this idea, but I have a feeling whenever I look at it that wherever you find Kaveri Delta, Tanjore Delta, any delta region which has had a history of Brahmanical systems in place, have moved very smoothly into globalization, into connections with the with the colonial period. They got all the SOPs and coming down to the present. Talking about system of rice intensification, my reservation was only that again the government of Andhra Pradesh announced, in fact, in 2005 that Sri will be followed in all these command areas, and the farmers are telling, they've said many times, farmers have raised problems about Sri, is that it is very labor intensive. And in today's time, when you have a program like the NREG, which gives very high cost of labor, and you expect a small farmer or a medium farmer to give that cost of labor to remove the weeds, because in system of rice intensification, the weeds keep growing very fast. So somebody has to keep removing them at the time of weeding. So that was one problem. The other problem is the government is saying first that I'll build this project for you so that I'm giving you irrigation water. Then the government itself says that you cannot use this much water. So please grow something using less water. And the people in the command area are saying, no, these crops are now used to so much water, they cannot grow in less water. No matter how hard you try, Sri cannot be followed in command area of irrigation projects. This is some truth that I also got to know very late, when I visited the KC Canal modernization project. So if I've answered all your, questions. So these are the three things I had to say.
This is something new. I haven't heard this. The SRA cannot be adopted in the command area.
Made sometime in 2004 or 2003 by a Kannadiga director called Girish Kasaravalli, and made this film, I think it was called Dvipa, about this couple, which is they have a house and how the water is rising and they're forced to move up, and finally it's all inundated. So yeah, there exists an Indian film too on this.
I think there's quite a few,
Yes.
In fact, once a filmmaker asked me that, once a filmmaker just wrote an email saying, I want to make a film, and he wanted me to give all the information that I had. So I said, I think it's easy, information is easily available on the web everywhere. The government doesn't withhold information, I must say that. Not all the time, as they're shown to be, because in fact, this whole idea of good governance, so-called, has forced the government to actually put out a lot of information on the web. So, it's not as if today's times, you need not always file an RTI. There's sometimes much information about the submergence, because what they think is it's a matter of pride for them, this project. It's only when they have to hide something that they do not put out the information. But when they're so proud of it, they'll go all out and put all there is to it, so that you say, oh my God, so much. Because all the land acquisition details are out there on the web, and for anybody to access. Everybody knows how much land has already gone. So, but the film didn't get done, Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think, let me tell you quite frankly that this has been one of the best in the series. In the 10 months that we've had these programs, this is easily one of the best. Thank you very much. And we've had a good discussion, and I do hope we'll have one more cover the remaining. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but if I can break the protocol, because you are supposed to have the last word. Now I just want to first thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy Iyer, because if you hadn't invited me for this, I would not have had this space to share, my views. Thank you so much. And thank you, IIC. Where is...
She's gone, I think.
She's gone, okay. Thanks.
Okay.